Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Greg Adamson made it into the room after all. Greg, look at that. I appreciate that. I
Good
appreciate
to
that.
see you
Happy
guys.
Friday. Great to see you again. Nice to see so many people joining us on this hot Philadelphia summer day for me. It's great to be on the tail end of the Friday here. This is one of our quarterly events where we have both a guest author and a mini case. So I'm super excited about that. Hey, if you're a veteran, let's show all the newbies how this is done. We like to encourage people to turn their camera on. It's so much easier to present and get to know each other when we can see each other. If you are a Zoom expert, you can rename yourself the way Robin included court after her name as an example. We love to know which organization people are coming from as well, certainly optional. Greg Adamson from Olympus is playing along from the jump. I appreciate that. And let's roll up our fingers because I like to use the chat as like a mastermind. Like I like to keep it active throughout. So I'm just curious, how long have you been coming to these community of practice events? And are you a first timer? We just came back from ATD in Washington, D.C., and I think we might have a lot of new folks joining this one. Travis, certainly early 2024. I would have even guessed longer than that, Travis. Stephanie, welcome. First timer. We should have some kind of, I don't know, whistle or streamer or something. But Barrett, yeah, good to have you back. You guys lit up the house last time you dropped a case study. Richard, first quarterly. Lori, second time. I am loving it. I'm loving it. Yeah, great, Jessica, dropping LinkedIn's and everything as well. For those of you who don't know me personally, I think I know a lot of you. I'm Kevin Cruz. I'm the founder and CEO of LeadX. Welcome to this leadership development community of practice. We do this monthly meetup and try to connect us in between the live events digitally with our LinkedIn group, with our vault of resources, free resources for you. It's an invite-only community with your peers. There are no real sales pitches, coaches, consultants. These are not sponsored other than just by LeadX. And other than a EQ giveaway you'll see in a minute here, we don't really do a lot of selling, and we stay out of the breakouts. We want you to be able to talk to your peers and get solid advice without any other considerations there. So welcome everyone, and I hope you'll enjoy playing along. Let me also hit us with the agenda for the day. Now, especially for you first timers, it can be a bit confusing because we tend to have fun and socialize and vamp along the way a little bit. And you're like, give me the case study. I showed up for the case study. And basically, we will get very soon here to our guest author. Her new book is You're the Boss. Everyone on this call is going to get a free copy of her book. We have a great case study from Intuit about how they actually drove some behavior change among their directors and managers, and we're going to dive in deep into that. We like to do a quick breakout. Nothing heavy, but we want you to dig your well before you're thirsty. Build that social capital. Make some new LinkedIn friends. Have some people who are going to have your back throughout your career. So we like to try to have you meet a few new friends. And at the end, time permitting, I always like to share my top 4 or 5 plays of the month with a hat tip to ESPN, where I just share things that caught my eye that I think are going to make you more interesting in the boardroom and probably more boring with your friends at a cocktail party as you tell them about it. And of course, next week, we will email notes and links. If you're hearing the music, we've got Elvis Presley. First time we've had Elvis Presley in the house. Playing, of course, singing You're the Boss. A little on the nose, Sabina, I know, but I wanted to do that in your honor. And let me pause the music and introduce a great friend, my co-host, a great leader himself, and a great leadership development expert, the Dwayne Bess. How are you, Dwayne?
I'm doing well. I always love it. I look forward to your intros because regardless of what's going on in my world, if I'm having a bad day, I'm like, I'm going to get a great intro by Kevin. So thank you, brother.
I want to be your hype man. I want to be everybody's hype man here. It's like, got a bad day, just play it back. Just play it back and everything. It's incredible. Dwayne, how long have we been doing this now together? It's been a while, right?
Okay, is it 3 years?
It's at least 3 years, I think.
Yeah,
So
3 to 4. Wait, when did we start? Good Lord.
so we
It's been a
launched.
while.
So yeah, now this is, I won't go down memory lane and bore folks for too long, but so we first did these in COVID, and I think the first one there was
Oh,
like two folks from LeadX and two people. I won't even say which company, and we are basically just drinking wine and chit chatting for about an hour, and that might have been my favorite event. I'm not sure. Jessica got a thumbs up on that. We got to get the wine back, Wine Fridays, and everything. Dwayne, we've got a packed agenda, but I want to start and actually jump into a little. Everyone seems to really engage with our AI tips of the month,
mm.
any of the new tools, and this is an easy one. So this is something I've been playing with a little bit. So imagine if you could take any photo and turn it into a video just with a text prompt. Now, personally, I'm hearing some very interesting things where people are using this tool to sort of like bring to life, relatives that have passed or their great great great
Wow.
grandfather, things of that nature. In a professional setting, it's enabling people with no video skills to
Mm.
create little video clips that they're using in role plays, that they're using in simulations. And so I just wanted to demonstrate it. And so, I decided, well, let me go find a really good photo, like off the internet, as an example, Dwayne, and let me see if I could bring it to life. Now, Dwayne, the internet doesn't lie. The internet's memory goes way back. Do you
Where are
know
you
where I'm
going
going
with
with
this?
this?
I have no idea, and I'm scared.
Dwayne, does Essence magazine from 2012 ring a bell? My friends, look what I found on the internet. Now, I always tease Dwayne about his handsome good looks
Oh
and
my
his
God, that's hilarious.
MMA skills. But look at this gold I found. Yeah,
Oh
Rennie,
my
you give some
God,
hearts on that. I'm all aflutter. I'm telling you. And Dwayne, I tease because I am so jealous, right? I'm so
that's
jealous.
hilarious. Oh my
So
God.
here's what I did. I took the photo on the left, and the tool is called Higgsfield AI. Higgsfield AI. All I did, I dropped the photo over into the window, and this all I said: have this man strut down the catwalk, because I had to see it, Dwayne. Now, the video I'm going to show, depending on your bandwidth, like it's smooth on my camera. If it's a little stuttery, it's the zoom bandwidth problem. But here's what it looks like. We'll get this playing. Now, there's no audio. I didn't add the audio.
Oh wow.
So from one photo saying strut down the catwalk,
Yeah.
he moves along. And then I said, what would it look like if Dwayne back then received an award? And so I just changed, have this man accept an award at the Oscars. And now it changed the stage, right? So for free, one little text prompt, taking a photo and turning it into a video. Now, like all of our prompts with ChatGPT and others, I could have given it a 5-paragraph long prompt, right? I could have said, have them turn this way, have them look into the camera, put these people in the background. There's an audio track that you can lay in as well. So
So Kevin,
Higgsfield AI.
could you say get rid of gray and return my hairline? Could you said that? That would be golden.
We can all improve ourselves in video, and but hey, deep fakes are real, right? This is crazy. So part of this, I like to share interesting AI tools. I am an AI optimist, and I think that AGI, like we are 5, maybe 7 years away from every device on our desk having superhuman genius, right? We are not going to win by IQ, which is why all of you smart people and about 1,000 other heads of leadership development told us in our benchmark last year that emotional intelligence is the #1 priority for 2025. It's always been the case that EQ has mattered more than IQ, but as we move deeper and deeper into the role, into the age of AI, EQ is going to be front and center. And that is our soft pitch and something free for you as well. So if you want to develop your colleagues' emotional intelligence, we hope you'll consider LeadX. You've got two options: become certified as a LeadX EQ trainer yourself, or have LeadX facilitators come in and run the sessions for you. And the good news is, if you are already certified in one of the major EQ systems, Talent Smart, Blue EQ, ESKI, MHS, etc., we'll waive the certification fee. If you already have the background, you've already been certified in the past, you can come through LeadX certification for free. If you have any interest at all, email evan@leadx.org or drop a comment, and we will give you more information. And if you're still considering why LeadX, it is the only EQ system that Dr. Travis Bradberry is recommending. It's because we're the only one that offers 1 year of free support, including access to a human EQ coach. And that was partly driven. I see my friend Mark Osborne here, who was saying, hey, Kevin, you guys used to offer 12 weeks of support. We want to support people for a year. And I said, you got it, Mark. You say it, we're going to make it happen. It's the only one that gives free unlimited retests for that year. And it uses Dr. Travis Bradberry's new EI test that kind of prevents that faking good. $135 per participant, and you get 1 year of EQ coaching, the assessment, all that kind of stuff. Crazy, crazy great way to bring EQ to the masses. And if you want a taster, we've got 1 hour kind of showcases going on, all virtual, July 10th, August 5th. They're free. Just send an email, evan@leadx.org. We'll give you the information. All right, Dwayne, did I vamp long enough about our EQ stuff? I kind of went too long on that.
No, I think you did a great job, and look out for my Kevin pick moving soon.
Paybacks, right? Paybacks. What would life be without minor pranks between friends? All right, so I am really excited about this next segment. This book, again, a reminder, especially for all of you who are new, you might not realize that we send you a free copy of this book. It'll arrive within a week or two. If you did not put your mailing address, your shipping address into the form when you sign up for the COP, or if you've moved, then send an email to Debbie@LeadX or Evan@LeadX.org and give us your shipping address. So we can only give you the book in the mail if we know where to send it. So just shoot it over our way. And so without further ado, wow, our guest spent 14 years at Microsoft, initially managing software development teams, and then evolved where she's leading executive development and succession planning for over 11,000 managers, over 1,000 senior executives. She worked directly with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer in this role. Today, she's an elite C-level coach, advising executives and organizations around the world. She delivers keynotes, seminars, conferences. She's written for Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. We are celebrating, as everybody knows, the veterans, you're getting the book. So we're not selling the book. We are celebrating the book. We are celebrating the author. Please help me welcome a good friend, Sabina Nawaz. Sabina, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Kevin, and hello, everyone. I'm really looking forward to digging into this conversation.
Sabina, I got to say that fantastic book, of course, and I want to say on the record for everybody, you know, we've had over the years now, we've had a lot of leadership development, leadership authors and experts, big names on the program. And there's sort of like two people in my mind that are the top coaches, gurus, experts out there. They're the best, and they're not well enough known, and you're one of the two. And so in my mind, if I had to pick of any of the hundreds of coaches that are out there, wow. And I know you wouldn't even work with me, Sabina, but I would pick you. And so your HBR articles are, to me, must-read articles, and they got a lot of good stuff, but I don't read them all. So this is for those of you who aren't familiar with Sabina's work. Dig into her book, start following her online. Sabina, you've got a new Substack newsletter, right? We're going to drop a link so people can sign up to that. And I just want to let people know they should lean into this conversation and your work. How's that for a hype up statement?
Wow, thank you. Now I want to know who's the other person.
Dory Clark.
Oh, love Dory. Love.
You know Dory also.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. Of course, I do. My ego is so fragile, Sabina, that when I got You're the Boss, right, my copy, of course, what I do, I go back to the acknowledgments. Did Sabina name check me in the book? And you did. Thank you very much. And I saw Dory's name in there as well, so I could tell that you were mutual friends of Dory's.
Yes.
So let me start at the beginning here. So Sabina, we know everybody's going to get a copy of the book. but set them up so that they just like rip that package open and dive in. What's the Cliff Notes? What's it about?
Cliff Notes are 3 points. I'll just stick to the 3 points, and then I know you're going to ask me questions where we'll dig into the details. Point number 1, getting promoted is the riskiest time in your career. Point number 2, it is not power that corrupts people, but pressure. And point number 3, if pressure is that silent corrupter, power is the great divider. It isolates you and keeps you in the dark about the impact of your actions under pressure.
Okay, wow. I feel like I should jump into those 3 points now, but I'm going to hold off for just a second because Sabina, you could have written like all kinds of books, right? Endless possibilities of books, multiverse, lots of options out there. Why did you decide to write this book now?
Wow. Well, this book now now is a very expansive timeline. I think this book has been in the making, at least in my head, for the last 10 years. And one of the reasons is that as an executive coach, I do what's called interview-based 360s, where I do deep interviews of about a dozen people that my client works with, and I write down everything they say. As a result, I ended up with 12,000 pages of data and analyzed that data, had someone else analyze it as a third party, and so on. And that gave me the themes that show up in this book, the 5 pressure pitfalls, the 4 power gaps, and what to do about it. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book.
You say it's one of the reasons, so I'm going to lean into. I won't go all 5 whys like Six Sigma or anything, but what's additional reasons? I mean, what was the personal reason for this?
Yeah, and that's confession time. I was a lousy manager at Microsoft. Now, that wasn't always the case, Kevin. When I first started managing for the first about 10 years, I ran teams that built software. People told me I was the best boss they'd ever had. I coached them. I cared about them. Those were great years. Then I ran Microsoft's management development. And when I was 8 months pregnant, my manager left the company. I took on her job responsibilities in addition to mine. Now, picture this scene. I'm coming back for my first day after parental leave, putting on lipstick for the first time in 5 months. And my assistant, Lori, calls me frantic. Where are you? Steve expects you in 30 minutes. Lori starts reading me the memo I'm supposed to discuss with Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft, as I hit warp speed on my way to work. And Kevin, that set the pace and tone for my return to work. Inbox overflowing, calendar packed, infant at home, no sleep, no peace, no patience. Sound familiar to anybody? Yeah. So overnight, I morphed from being caring and compassionate to snippy and short. Still 5'3" short, but also short-tempered. I was rushing to meet deadlines. I don't have time to explain anything in detail, let alone repeat them. I've started to micromanage. Once Steve was concerned about the umlaut that we'd left off the printed name of a participant for an event we ran for him and Bill. And I had Janice on my team triple check the names of all 50 people and make it a practice for every future conference. When people would come to my office, I would leave all 10 fingers on the keyboard, look over my shoulder. I'm super busy. You're less important than me. Spit it out and move on. The problem with this is I thought I was being efficient. When in reality, of course, my colleague Joe comes by and here I am. And Joe says, Zach is crying in his office because of what you said. Whoa. And now, in addition to my entire body turning hot with shame, I'm thinking, how did this happen? How did I go from being caring and compassionate to somebody that people apparently are afraid of and really don't like? Now, I wasn't a bad person. I was a boss behaving badly. Nobody wants to do a bad job as a boss. Nobody wakes up going, let me make a bunch of people miserable around me. And nobody wants to work for that umlaut either. So that's why I've written this book, is because I have a ton of compassion for managers under pressure. And I know what that looks like. We can all go overnight from being best boss ever to the boss from hell. And I've now road tested these tools and practices with my clients over 20 years to come up with concrete tools to apply. We're never going to be pressure free. So how can we become pressure proof?
Love that. Love that. Sabina, it's another reason why I like your work so much, even prior to the book, your articles. There are some people I respect who teach based on experience. So they've led teams, large teams, and it's based on experience. That's great, and that's qualitative. There's others that do a lot of deep research, more academic, and do research based. I find that valid. The ones I don't like, my closest friends here will know who I'm talking about. It's the ones who don't have a lot of experience. They don't do research, but they kind of just share fortune cookie wisdom, which unfortunately tends to be pretty viral and sells TED Talks and stuff. You've got that experience, and throughout the book, you're sharing when you were less than perfect, which, opening up, being very vulnerable and authentic. And I want to come back to that, but first, you talk about this idea. So someone was asking, what was the third point? You said power divides. Now, most people think it's the power corrupts. There's the Abraham Lincoln quote, if you want to test a man's character, give him power. There's the old power corrupts absolutely from Lord Acton. And you're saying that's not quite true, though. Is it that we don't need to worry about the power at all? It's about pressure? What's the nuance there?
Yeah, I think it's the dual diabolical forces of power and pressure together that create this either really dangerous cocktail, or they can be harnessed for good, because pressure and power are also really good. Let's make no mistake about that. But most of us under pressure become unmindful, and that turns our good intentions into these destructive habits. For me, it didn't just squeeze out my time, it squeezed out my humanity. So I think it's pressure that corrupts, and then power that isolates us and insulates us from the feedback we need to receive. Power is sort of like a broken volume knob. Everything employees say upward is muted, milder than what they're experiencing, cushioned in praise. So when an employee is saying, yeah, everything's fine, boss, what they actually mean is, I've started a secret group chat about your management style. And then at the same time, everything a manager is saying is amplified, more urgent, more dire, gunning straight at me. So when a boss says, hey, can we chat? It sounds to the employee like, hope you said goodbye to your office plants. This is the last time you're going to be seeing them. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we, assuming that nobody wants to struggle, nobody wants to do a bad job, bosses want to manage well, employees want to contribute and grow, how do we turn that tension into teamwork? How do we get them facing each other and rowing in the same direction?
What a great way to think about it. I've never heard described as like power with the broken volume knob. Like everything gets muted to you, everything you say is amplified.
Right?
I recall I was at an event years ago and saw Dick Costolo when he was CEO of Twitter. And they were saying like, oh, now that you're in the hot seat for a year, like what surprised you? And he referenced this thing. He said that one day he was like walking out of the office and he had like without thinking just made some comment about the plant in the lobby of Twitter, like it was dying. They hadn't watered it or something. So it's something about like the plant being ugly, or that the plant is an eyesore. He said within a month, all the plants had been removed throughout Twitter. Says he didn't realize that people were really trying to listen and parse every word and try to please him so much. And the broken volume knob is
and it's not just every word, and we have countless stories like that, Kevin. It's not just every word, but it's every facial expression. When I coach CEOs, I often tell them before they're about to go into some key meetings, rearrange your face. Rearrange your face to be in line with how you're feeling about this situation and what you want to channel.
Yeah. So I was going to save some of my more challenging off-script questions for later, but Sabine, I think you can handle them.
Bring it on.
So with what we just talked about, we're talking about power, we're talking about less than perfect boss behaviors. Something I do wonder about. Now, remember, I'm in the leadership development employee engagement business, so everybody knows what side I'm on, and yet you look at people like a Bill Gates, like a Steve Ballmer with the umlauts, right? And didn't hurt their career, people will say, and maybe now in a lot of these cases they'll say I'm successful because of these tough habits.
Yes.
I have someone who, a friend of mine, he runs, he's overseeing all app development at Apple. He worked for Steve Jobs for many years until he passed. He's now reports to Tim Cook. And I asked him what it was like, working with Steve back in the day. And I expected him to say like, oh, the press exaggerated it, or those were only on bad days. And I've heard there was Steve 1.0 before he got fired, and Steve 2.0 came out mild. He didn't say anything. He says, oh yeah, he used to call me names. He would make fun of our work. He would shout at us in meetings, and he was the best boss that I ever worked for. So how do we reconcile this, that we know that like all this stuff matters? Is it that,
Yes.
hey, Kevin, you can't act like that because you're not Ballmer or Jobs or Gate and you're a mere mortal? How do we reconcile those two things?
Well, it's not just some celebrity CEOs who have been reviled and revered at the same time, but many of my clients will say, but Sabina, I got here because I was a hard ass, because I named names and took down people or whatever. And I ask them to consider, is it because or is it despite?
Right.
And many of them fall in this category of what I call innocent saboteurs. Innocent saboteurs. Look, yes, some of these people have had phenomenal success. And at the same time, could they have had even more success? Could they have done that without breaking down the psyches, the egos, the productivity, the motivation of employees? Do you want people to follow you because of fear? And some people say yes, in which case I go, well, I'm not the coach for you. Or do you want them to come in and provide discretionary motivation, action, time, brain space? Research shows that employees who are treated poorly will even deliberately make mistakes. Think about that. They're willing to sabotage their own results just to get back at that boss. And we're seeing more of that with the younger generation entering the workforce. Their tolerance for some of these things, and frankly, the AI and all the tech and the tools available to report on some of these things has increased. Now, the tolerance has decreased, the ability to make it more public has increased. So do you want to be lampooned? Do you want to be reviled on Glassdoor? All those things, to me, come into account. And there is one of the myths I bust in the book is that there is no such thing as a purely good boss or a purely bad boss. So even if you look at, say, a Steve Jobs, there were obviously things that were hugely impressive, impactful, superpower strengths that carried him. And we don't know why certain things happen, especially for people who have big names, from a distance.
Yeah.
I have had the privilege, and you have had the privilege of watching behind the scenes why some people are doing what they're doing. Just yesterday, I had a conversation where someone said, yeah, my boss really micromanages. And then it turned out, I thought that was what was going on. It turned out that my boss was actually protecting me and setting me up for success with the CEO conversation, because the CEO digs into all the details down to the umlaut. So if my boss hadn't prepared me for that, I would have had a full fail over there.
I love this. Everybody knows I kind of have an ear for language, and I think I'm going to start using the phrase like even down to the umlaut. It's like I'm ready, boss. Even down to the umlaut. I'm ready for that sales call. Even down to the umlaut. It'll be an inside joke very quickly here. Before we continue, let me also let everyone know that like we welcome questions. Feel free to type them in the chat and or raise your digital hand, and we can unmute you as the conversation goes on. So one of the things that just delighted me, Sabina, as you know, at LeadX, we've been beating the drum for 8 years that people spend too often, our colleagues spend all this time designing what's going on in the classroom. They're designing classroom experiences and curriculum, and they're fighting every detail down to the umlaut. And then they really don't invest much in application, synthesis, reinforcement, putting it on the job.
Yeah.
We're all about behavior change. And so we like nudges, we like micro habits and micro actions. Lo and behold, your book, it's like a centerpiece, the use of micro habits. So what does that term mean to you, and how are you using it with your clients?
There are two characteristics of a micro habit. First of all, it's in the word, it's micro. It's really, really micro. And second, it's done every day. Now, whenever I say micro, my clients all nod their heads and go, yeah, 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 I get it. And they don't, because they're all high achievers, they're all perfectionists, what have you. And so it's the only way to overachieve in this particular in behavior change is to underachieve. So let's say somebody has a fitness goal in addition to whatever work goal they might have. And they go, yeah, okay, I know going to the gym 30 minutes a day is not going to work. And you're telling me micro habits. So I'll go for 15 minutes. And I'm like, nope, that's not micro. Okay, so how about 10 minutes on the Peloton? Nope. Right? Keep going. It's like a limbo contest. How low can you go? And we work out to a one push-up. It has to be so ridiculously small that they start laughing, and then we know that's the case. And so my clients have become better listeners by first leaving their phone off, away, out of arm's reach for 1 minute in one meeting a day, to now just being fully radically present, to never interrupting, to all sorts of health and fitness goals. Kevin, last Sunday I ran my very first marathon.
Ooh.
And yes, thank you. And guess what? When I first dreamed about running, I couldn't even run a mile. My micro habit was 0.1 miles. 0.1 miles. Change is incremental in time, monumental over time, as a colleague of mine likes to say, and I've borrowed that quote from her. I love it. And that's what micro habits help you do.
That's incredibly powerful and relevant on the marathon. I don't officially have a goal to run a marathon, but Sabina, it's like a limiting belief. I don't think I can physically ever run a marathon because I don't know that I could run the 0.1 mile right now, right? And so, but you've given me hope, and it does show the power of starting small. And again, how do you know it's small enough? When you laugh, like it seems so ridiculous that you laugh.
Yes.
That is a great measure. And then, so you literally started at 0.1 and just built up over the year, I assume years.
Yes. And 3 years. 3 years.
3 years.
So in a year and a half, I think, I ran my first half marathon. And then now I do half marathons as a short practice run, so, but that 0.1, the other key with the 0.1 is you've got to stick with that for like weeks. So patience is not a virtue of mine. And I knew that because I tried for 20 years fantasizing about being a runner, and it just wasn't working. So finally, it took me 20 years to get to that. Like, okay, Sabina, you're going to have to stick with this for like 3 weeks. 3 weeks at 0.1 miles. And then when you increment it, it's incrementing by 0.1 miles. Now I can increment by longer distances and higher speeds, but not anywhere close to when it's becoming a full-fledged habit.
Sabina, this is just a little bit off topic, but will be valuable. A good number of the people on this call have reached out to me at some point and said, Kevin, I want to write a book someday. Will you talk to me about writing a book? Did you use any micro habits or habits in the writing of your own book? Like what was the process?
Yes. Well, a couple of things. First, as I said, it's been 10 years in the making in my head. And the first thing in my head was absolute terror. Absolute terror for playing big, putting myself out there and going, oh my gosh. So it took me a while. And then it occurred to me, my micro habit was to write about writing first. So every single day I would write 1 or 2 sentences. That's it. 1 or 2 sentences that said, I'm scared out of my gourd, or I feel so dumb. I have nothing new to contribute to the world, or whatever. I mean, it was mostly negative thoughts, but the magic of it was by forcing myself to write it every single day, it didn't mean I kept swirling the drain. It meant I was able to drain that out of my system. And one day, finally, I went, I can do this. And I'm done with this. This is a journal that can be set aside, and now enter the manuscript stage left. So that was a really helpful micro habit for me. The other one was actually after I had done the bulk of the manuscript, I get bored easily. Remember, patience is not a virtue. And so reading and rereading and revising the darn manuscript, especially when my publisher said, Great content, wrong structure. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You're going to have to like do this thing all over again. So that going through the manuscript end to end was a very painful process for me. And so again, I gave myself a micro habit there, is like, because I would just avoid, if left to my own devices, I would avoid it all day for days at a stretch. So I said, all right, one paragraph a day. And many days, of course, I ended up doing one chapter a day, but I got my gold star at one paragraph. One of the reasons I am such a proponent of micro habits is because I read this article once that had a deep impact on me about world-class writers, you know, the Hemingways of the world. And somebody had apparently compiled what were their daily habits. One, all of them went for walks every day. And this is a practice I call blank space in the workspace. And two, they quit writing for the day when they were on a high, not when they were on a low, so that they were excited to pick up the work the next day. I mean, it seems so obvious when you think about it, but most of us work until we're completely drained. And then we go, I suck. I have no more new ideas. And why am I going to come back to it the next day? Micro habits is your chance to feel like a winner so that you're going to come back the next day.
Love it. I have more questions, of course, myself, but I wasn't sure, Evan, if I had missed a hand raised or not. Cut me off or throw someone up.
Yeah, I'd seen Rennie had his hand up, so I'll
Hey,
bring him on.
yeah. Hey, Rennie, what do you got for us?
Hello, thanks for hosting. Thanks, Sabina, for all you've done. And it sounds like you've really overcome small and big feats. So I love the micro habits and just the point one and all that. So here's my question. Maybe it's tough, maybe it's not, but I love your opening story. It was so clear around what you were walking into after a leave. And I can't imagine, you know, newborn and just the disarray that you must have been in, and then to go to work and start day one, never mind, you know, the first 3 months or years. Okay, so you painted that picture pretty well. So the question is, if you look back, given the context, given the expectations, given the place in life, given everything that you were in reality in then, but from what you know now, like what would you have done different?
Fantastic question. Thank you. I would still do the same job. I would not trade the experience itself. The thing I would do differently is pause. I often say now, when you're under pressure, do nothing. What I mean by that, don't get so frantic, which is what we mostly do when we're under pressure. Just pause and do nothing. I think I would have paused more often instead of telling myself, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, which of course was backing up and barfing all over me, including the baby. Funny, actually, whenever I would feed like I was in a rush and I would stuff the yogurt down his face, he would actually throw it up. But that was also happening at work. So I think I would build in probably a micro habit around pausing. Like once a day, just in 30 seconds, pause and ask yourself this question, whatever that question might be, you know, or ask someone else a question that helps keep me centered and not have the effect that it had on poor Zach.
Sabina, we've got about 5 more minutes, and I feel like I need to ask you, before we lose you, about your time working closely with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. Not everybody, you know, followed their careers, but from the outside, for most people, they look like very different people, very different styles. And you got to work with them up close. And so I'm curious, like, when it comes to leadership, what is something maybe positive that you saw from each of them? And maybe what's something looking back, you're like, they should have worked with their coach on that behavior, or they could have dulled off that sharp edge or something. Like, what did you learn?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the book. Was it Innovators? Walter Isaacson's book, where he basically showed that most iconic companies started with a great work marriage between two people and having complementary skills. I found it an incredible experience to have that seat at the table behind the scenes. And the biggest thing I found in common to both of them was this capacity to be radically present, with what is going on right now. Imagine all the pressures they are under in those big jobs. and all the things that could have distracted them. And yes, you can argue that they had lots of staff and handlers and so on who could take care of things. But my gosh, those are stressful jobs. And when they walked into a room and they had something in front of them, that's what they were focused on. It was incredible presence. And that by the way, when I work with my clients, some of them have been able to cut their staff meetings in half the time once they've managed to get everybody fully present. You can get a lot done. In terms of what I wish they'd worked with a coach on, that's not a question I'm comfortable answering, Kevin.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that I can push back,
Yeah,
because
of course.
I would not want to talk about them or any of my clients in public on the confidential aspects of our work.
Yeah. Let me try a different question. Maybe it's not as confidential. So a lot of your work with them was in selecting talent, right? The next generation, identifying high
Succession
potential
planning,
for
leadership
succession
development.
planning.
Yep.
Well, first, you weren't using an old regular like 9-box exercise, or were you?
No.
Well, wasn't a 9-box. Okay, good. Not a fan of 9 boxes. So how were you doing it in general? And then were they looking for a specific thing? Like, did they, like, I have a bias for agency. Like, I want to know that even if someone doesn't have experience or skills, but like, they're going to just make things happen. They're going to move fast, push for results. That's just a bias of mine. Were they looking for something in particular?
So we did not use any, the word rigid comes to mind, but any prescriptive single assessment or tool or framework. We did come up with ideas and frameworks of our own, but they were fairly straightforward. On the succession planning side, what happens if there's a disaster scenario? And then who's ready now, regardless of disaster scenario? Who's 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and then you broadening it with the usual mix. It's also people who are not just, how do we, on the leadership development side, how do we not just grow people who are experts in their field, but who have true general management skills? How do we round them out to manage an entire P&L? What was the other part of your question? Was shoot.
Well, it sounded like you're answering it in terms of what you're looking for and the frameworks. I wasn't sure if there was like a trait that they were looking for.
Oh, yes, thank you. That was the part I was going to answer. What I loved about that was that the traits morphed over time. And that's, I think, really key. And we rarely do in organizations. We take, especially when there are iconic CEOs, we take whatever their thing is, and that becomes gospel for the duration, the lifetime of the entire organization, regardless of what's going on in the environment, regardless of what's going on with the next generation of the workforce, etc., or the market or the competition. So what I loved was that it shifted over time. It progressed. So sometimes it was this thing, sometimes it was the other. Now you could say, well, that sounds like flip-flopping. It wasn't. There was a core set of things that were important, and those tied in with the culture, the values, the competencies, all that other good stuff that large corporations have. But we really kept looking at what about today and what about tomorrow? Because especially with succession planning, we're not looking for people who are running right now. We're looking for people around the corner. So what do we anticipate? Like the move from on-premises software to in the cloud software. What do we need for that? Whether they're on the software side of things or the sales side of things, what sorts of skills and capacities do we need? So we were also able to go be fluid, but also go meta to how does the capacity of executives shift? For example, right now in this age of AI, what is that mindset? What is that capacity we need now for people to lead when they are going to have to manage agents and humans very soon into the future?
Yeah,
Does
I
that
love
answer
that.
your question,
Agents and
Kevin?
humans. It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way you ended right there, it makes me hopeful and fearful all at the same time.
Very much.
So, I'm so grateful to be alive right now to see all this unfolding. and it's a little scary and disorienting.
For sure.
As well.
For
That's
sure.
wonderful. Sabina, thank you so much for joining our family. Congratulations on the book. Where they're going to dive in to get this work, how can they connect with you best moving forward?
Yeah, so sign up for my Pressure Proof Substack. That would be one way. You can go to my website, sabinanawaz.com. When you've got the book, it has tools that you can download, so you can do your own yes list, your own micro habits, etc. So feel free to go to my website, and you can reach me there as well. I love, as an engineer, I love to continue to tinker with all the tools that I have, and there are 16 of those in the book. So you tinker with those tools, share what you've come up with, because it'll benefit a broader set of people.
I love it. Sabina, thank you again. Best of luck. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dwayne. Looking forward to more videos.
That was fantastic. That was fantastic. Everyone, in just a minute, we're going to be doing our case study, our mini case with Intuit. Dwayne, I'm just curious, any initial thoughts and reaction from you're the boss and all the bombs that Sabina was dropping on us?
Yeah, I actually threw it in the chat, and I said something that a nugget that kind of came together was, pregnant pauses give birth to revelation. And she was saying one thing that she would do more was the pause. And, you think about that. If it's in football, what do you do for a running back? You allow the play to develop, right? Even if it's in fighting, what do? You wait for the timing to strike. So many things in life, the pause is so important. So I was thinking about that, and I'm like, wow. What are the areas just this week or this month I could have maybe paused for that needed revelation? So that really landed well with me, Kevin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, my favorite topic these days is all about emotional intelligence, and that's like one of the key takeaways, right? The power of the pause. It's that moment between the stimulus, the trigger, and your response. And we can lean into that and have a powerful response, or we can just react, and it doesn't always go our way when we react. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, Evan, I'm assuming that we can spotlight our next guest. I am excited that he's joined us again. He has a PhD in IO psychology from Cornell, worked at in the talent and leadership development areas at Accenture and Tesla, phenomenal organizations. For the last 6 years, he's been transforming leadership development at Intuit. Please welcome Director of Talent Development, Dr. Barrett Keene. Barrett, how are you?
Barrett's good, and I'm doing fine. And it's great to be able to meet you all. Some of you see you all again. Kevin, Evan, great to be able to see you specifically. And Dwayne Best, honored to be able to meet you. So yeah, we'll dive in. Basically,
wait, Barrett. Before I'm going to cut you off in record time here because Sabina shared that she did a marathon. She's like a dream of mine, like a fantasy of mine. Now, I'm not even making this up, Barrett. So in the last year, as I'm reached the ripe old age of 58, I'm just reflected on life, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I should take some time off of work and walk across America. Kind of weird idea, right? How many people think of that freaky thing? And I started Googling, what's the path? What time do you go? How would you do it? Do you use a chain? I'm starting to think about this. And then all of a sudden I stumble on it, Barrett. You have walked across America. Tell us about that. Okay, come on. That's absolutely crazy.
That's really funny. Yeah, it was actually a goal my friend Chris and I set in high school. We said, you know what, let's do this. Let's walk and let's speak about leadership. And we went to a leadership conference when I was 14 years old, and both of us said, I think this is what we want to do with our lives. And that's kind of what I've been doing since then. Chris is now the president of a junior college. He serves thousands of students, first gen college students. I'm so proud of the work he's doing. But we set that goal a long time ago, and then I got really involved with a group called the Global Orphan Project, and was trying to think about ways in the last year in our PhD program to raise awareness and support for orphan and abandoned children. And I needed to do one more study for my dissertation, and I wanted to look at teachers, middle and high school teachers, identifying transformational classroom leaders, and thinking about how we might be able to learn from them, how we might be able to help teachers do that. And so anyway, just a wild idea. I got some friends together, and we were going to walk across the country and just kind of rotate walking, but they both got really sick, like significant like surgeries within 2 months of us going. And so anyway, it ended up just being me. And so I ended up was going to have to walk halfway, and then I ended up having to walk all the way from Miami to San Francisco. And I slept on like a lot of couches, more floors than couches, more couches than beds, church pews, just all over the place, staying with a lot of families and speaking at schools and churches and colleges, and just encouraging people to meet the needs of the children in their communities and elsewhere, and then interviewing teachers and focus groups with their students and learning more about transformational leaders, and then at night writing my dissertation. So yeah, I don't really talk about that.
Barrett, I got to do a sidebar with Dwayne here. Dwayne, just between me and you, Dwayne, I am never inviting Barrett back again, because like here I am, like thinking I'm doing okay, like sitting on my couch eating my Doritos. Barrett is in the middle of doing his doctoral dissertation. Oh, you know what? Let me just walk across America and work on the dissertation at night. Like he just put all of us to shame, didn't he? It's incredible.
I feel this small, right? I mean, just like, this is impressive. I mean, when he was speaking, literally, I was getting like chills based off of the passion and what he was doing. Like, that is absolutely awesome, brother.
Raising money for orphans. So
I appreciate it. Check out the Global
Awesome.
Orphan Project. It's just goproject.org. They do great things to care for children that are in tough situations, families that are in tough situations. And my wife and I still have the chance to be able to be involved. But and quick update, I'm actually moving over to Stanford University Health. I'm going to be leading talent development and employee listening and organizational leadership. And so anyway, if you've led any of those, I have not led this kind of in this broad role. I would be very grateful to connect with you and Stephanie, I see you're over at Honest Health. It's my first time in healthcare, so I would love to connect with folks that might be able to offer some advice and perspective. So I'll dive in. Basically, we have some significant capability gaps. We have a big transformation into it, of transforming the business, and it felt like the behaviors that we had identified as foundational behaviors, most critical behaviors at Intuit, were just outdated and not in alignment with our business strategy. And so we actually went to our CHRO and said, we've got some gaps in some really important areas. We're not tracking these as closely, but feel like these are critical, and we want to go big, and we want to pull our managers together, mostly in person. We'll do it virtually as well. And she said, no, thanks. Very complex, very expensive. We had a layoff. We realized, wow, we have some big gaps in some of these same areas. CEO went to her and was like, we need to really go big with our managers. She was like, yeah, the team mentioned that. We've got a plan. And then he said, all right, let's do it. We would have had 5.5 months to be able to do it. We ended up having 42 working days. And he's like, we need to do it, but we got to do it by September 1st. And so we weren't able to do September 1st because this was the end of July, but we were able to launch by October 2nd. And we had a huge pivot for a really good reason. And I'll explain that in just a moment. But basically, let me share my screen. And I'll try to move quickly, but so we will have some time for questions. But basically, we ended up going through and being able to provide foundational manager capability learning for all of our approximately 3,000 managers and directors across the globe. And we were able to do that at 10 Intuit sites, and then virtually for about 800 of our managers as well. Folks in sales and customer support that are a bit more distributed. And also some folks weren't able to make those in-person meetings, right? And we have a couple of managers in Paris. We have a couple of managers in Latin America without offices and a couple of spots. And so we did some things virtually. But basically, we had to pull together not only the design, but 34 facilitators and then 13 people experience team members that could serve as kind of like additional support in the in-person rooms, 60 rooms at Intuit sites, which we had to kick out tons of people for really important meetings to be able to do this, which was a real big mess. 12 SVP and EVP leader teachers to be able to equip them, be able to guide them, be able to align with them on the key messages that we needed to be able to do that. And then facilitated the last week was wild. Eight workshops, 5 countries for 1,000 participants in 8 days, including a weekend. And so as you can imagine, being able to orchestrate this across the globe, it was a mess and a beautiful mess, right? Like we worked way too hard, we worked way too long, but honestly, there was a lot of beauty in being able to serve our managers really, really well across the PMP org, right? And so most of our facilitators, we did use Project Next. They provided some external help on design and then also facilitation. If you're not familiar with them, they're good folks. But we did the vast majority of this in-house. So we upskilled a bunch of our director plus HRBPs to be able to facilitate, and a few other talent acquisition and PMP leaders that are just really high potential. So we did this across the Intuit sites, and we actually, our main measures of success, I'll get into some additional behavioral change measures, but we really were looking at confidence to apply and valuable use of time as far as smile tests. And to be honest, this is foundational manager training, right? And so we ended up, and I'll get into to a little bit more about the behaviors in a moment, but we ended up focusing on goal setting, feedback, prioritization, and then a little bit on removing barriers to speed. And specifically feedback and goal setting, we do learning about feedback and goal setting. We've been doing it every year for the last 4 years. We're not that optimistic about an NPS because it was going to be required. We had never required leadership development training. And I had a lot of hesitations about that, and that had some advantages and some disadvantages, as you can imagine. And we were not that optimistic even about our confidence to apply or valuable use of time, because you're pulling together all these folks and you're designing something consistent from M1s to directors, right? On foundational capabilities that are required, on which you've trained folks, multiple years in a row on 2 of those 3. But we ended up being able to exceed those measures in the in-person workshops. And, we were curious about how much of that had to do with the experience, because if Intuit's going to do something, we do it well, right? So there was like, the delicious foods, really phenomenal experiences. We brought out food trucks from some of the high schools that we provide that to in career and technical education programs. They got to meet students. We try to be really purposeful in not just having a great learning experience, but a great participant experience as well. But we were very curious as we pivoted past the almost 2,000 folks in person, how much we would see those numbers drop virtually, when it's like, all right, another year of Zoom learning for you, after 5 years of only Zoom learning after the pandemic. But we actually just saw a 1-point drop in each of those 2 measures, which, to be honest, we were surprised about, but also we had been very, very purposeful in reading every word of participant feedback all the way through. And the team was just very purposeful about updating, iterating constantly. And we tried to be creative. We mailed sweatshirts to people's homes. We sent Uber Eats vouchers to make sure they had, a bit of a good experience and some food in their bellies, that kind of thing. But basically, we were able to reach between October 2nd and March 13th, 100% of our managers and directors. And that was that required a lot of work. It also required a lot of Slack messages individually to folks. Yep. And emails to folks. And we were able to get about 93% of the managers and directors in the room just with a carrot. That last 7%, we did have to repeatedly reach out and say, hey, Dwayne Best, we haven't had you in the workshop yet. We need you in the workshop. And then for about 40 people, we ended up having to just give a notification to their L2 leader, their CEO staff member, that they just hadn't had the chance to be able to get in there. And so some additional behavioral success measures that we focused on, and we were able to be green on all of these, thankfully. And I'll get into kind of how we did that, because it's really about 8 steps, is an increased percentage of directors and managers whose team members all have goals in BetterWorks, which is the platform we use. We like BetterWorks fine. We're going to try to improve it next year. But that's a big deal, because we've had gaps in the past, and that's not okay. Everybody needs to be able to have their goals situated. They need to be able to have quality goals. And then we were able to increase the percentage of managers and directors that were actually facilitating those monthly performance conversations and actually documenting those conversations, because we've had massive gaps in both of those areas, and we've been able to see statistically significant improvements in those areas, which is positive. And then increasing the percentage of directors and managers who are working to be able to just update their goals, because we've had a lot of set it and forget it behaviors over the years, and we're being able to see a drastic increase in that. And then we're able to, one thing that was very important to us is we wanted to be able to improve the quality of feedback provided, not only in those performance conversations monthly, but also at mid-year and year-end. And year-end's obviously a little bit more of a formal, and folks typically do a better job at year-end providing that really thoughtful year-end summary feedback. But we actually saw a significant increase across all the different organizations, except for our biz ops and program management, a slight dip. in the quality of feedback provided at mid-year, which is a little bit less formal, than we saw, and that was kind of in January post all this learning. For most of the folks, there were about 400 folks that ended up wrapping up on March 15th after mid-year check-ins in January. But we saw a really significant increase in the quality of feedback. And so we were thankful, not just to be able to hit the numbers, and there's a little bit of a sheep dip, in the process, which I don't love, but really what we were trying to do is we were trying to set really, really clear expectations. And so I'll get to that in a moment. So how we went about doing it. First thing first, we had to work hard on our sponsorship from our CHRO and our CEO. Even after we got a no thank you from our CHRO, we had multiple conversations with her about why we felt like it is something that we could do at the right time. These are some of the points of resistance. Howard Gardner wrote a book of Gardner's and Multiple Intelligences. That was his dissertation work, but he wrote a book called Changing Minds. And my favorite quote from that book, and I'm going to paraphrase it and probably butcher it, but is basically, if I could dispense one morsel of advice to people attempting to change minds, it's talk less, listen more, in order to be able to understand and thereby neutralize points of resistance. And so we tried to listen really, really well to our CHRO, understand the points of resistance, take the feedback we needed to take, and neutralize the points of resistance that we felt didn't need to be there, with humility and strength. And we don't ever do those things perfectly, but we worked with her. And then at the right time, we were able to get the yes. And then we were able to update the foundational manager capabilities. And that was huge, right? Because this is at the organizational level, right? We talk about from the CEO, from the CHRO, from the business leaders. These are the 4 things that we focused on. This is the previous version: guidance, feedback, performance evaluation, and recognition. These are fine items, but these are the 4 that really, really matched up to our business strategy and where we needed to be able to increase the speed of the organization and transform in the way that we wanted to be. And so we added goal setting because we really need to strengthen that. And at the end of the day, kind of everything starts with goals, right? The feedback you provide should be relative to the work against the goals. The prioritization that you should do should be informed by and in relation to the goals, and you should remove barriers according to those key priorities based on the goals. But we added goal setting, we kept feedback, and then we added prioritization, and we added removing barriers, really to be able to increase the clarity of the organization and the speed of the organization. And so once we were able to do that, then we updated our measurement process. So those 4 items now inform our manager score. And we have seen some good early returns from our most recent pulse relative to those items that we then taught about in the learning, but it's not official yet, so I can't actually declare a win on that. And so then we developed the in-person and virtual experiences, and then we developed a trackable async micro-learning approach. And we have kind of some challenges with our learning tech stack, and that it's really hard for us actually to be able to track and measure exactly who has completed which portions of their micro-learning. They can click complete on some things, but we don't know if you actually did it. And that's not okay. So we did partner with a vendor called Eris to be able to do that. Had overall, good results, but it can be better, and we're working to be able to do that. And then driving engagement, a lot of elbow grease in there, a lot of loving. Hey, Dwayne, we haven't had the chance to get you in there. Evan, haven't had the chance. This is the reasons why, this is the data we're seeing. And so really, it took a lot of work to hit that, to go from 90% to 100%. But there were some key folks like Mary Steves on our team who just honestly willed it to happen. And then having CEO support is a very helpful thing. And then we embedded ourselves into all performance learning, right? And so the teams have been overly separate in the past, which makes 0 sense. And so now all performance learning, right? So goal setting, our team is driving the development of that learning. Year-end learning, our team is kind of like playing the right-hand role to make sure that we are really, really focusing on how to incorporate feedback and even prioritization, into that as we think about priorities for the next year. And then we're continuing to put our foot on the gas and continue building throughout FY26. And so, a couple of just small things here. Basically, we were able to, with that micro learning piece, we were able to drive a 44% engagement rate. And so when we see by engagement rate is there's nothing super impressive here, but percentage of learners who responded to at least 1 question, and then completion rate would be the folks that who've engaged and completed the entire course. And so we saw about 65% of our folks completed the entire micro-learning course over the course of just 6 weeks, right? So nothing amazing. And we're looking to be able to strengthen this in FY26. And then another, 35% that had some in progress. And then 56% we had zero engagement from, which is hard and frustrating. But that is a lot better than we've ever done before in terms of micro-learning. And you can see here how the team was very, very purposeful. We launched a lot of these in the very beginning of October, and we had really low rates. And so, we tweaked and iterated, and you can see how we've been able to see some significant increases to get above that red line on kind of all of these remaining workshops, and really hit some really high rates later on in terms of completion of those courses. And then in FY26, that last step is behavior change. It takes a long time, to really build capabilities and shift behaviors and really shift cultures. And these are 3 new manager score items, right? And so we're keeping the foot on the gas in FY26. And you can see this is the FY25 process. We had some goals learning. It was disconnected from Manager Foundations workshops. We had a little bit of asynchronous learning. Then we went into mid-year, but honestly, we incorporated, but it wasn't completely tied in. And then year end was a bit separate. And this year, it's going to be a 100% seamless and integrated experience for a leader. It won't come from the talent and performance management team versus the manager or leadership development team. It will just all be integrated. So as soon as you wrap up your goals learning, which we're helping design, you're getting extension async learning that's going to pull you from that experience and into those in-person workshops that are focused on removing barriers and prioritization. And then you'll have extension learning that will pull out of those workshops and into mid-year in a way that feels integrated and building upon one another, where you'll go big time into feedback and prioritization for the end of the rest of the year. And then a lot of async and peer learning, peer coaching that will focus on removing barriers, because you can't do everything at the same time. But removing barriers kind of in this kind of springtime, we'll have a big, heavy focus and emphasis there. It's also tax season, so you don't see a whole lot of in-person stuff or virtual stuff here. And then year-end learning, where we'll continue to focus on feedback and prioritization, and then lead back into goal setting. So that's the deal. I know I went fast. I know I talk fast. But
so Barrett,
not perfect, but we were able to see some impact.
Great stuff. You did move fast, so I'm sure there are questions. I want to tell everyone now's the time to put your questions in the chat. And while you're thinking about that or typing your questions in, I'm going to fire off some quick ones for you, Barrett. So those 4 topics that you ended up aligning on, goal setting, feedback, you covered those 4. You had 8 days to cover those 4 topics. Is that right?
No, it was just a 1-day workshop and then asynchronous learning in between.
What was the
really
8
focused
days?
on 3 out of the 4. Oh, so in 8 days we had 5 workshops. We had 8 workshops.
Oh, that was the whole
countries,
project.
1,000 participants in 8 days. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry that didn't try. I'm glad I asked the question though. So it was a 1 day, so about 6-7 hours of learning time.
Yeah.
And
full day, yeah, about 7 hours. Yeah.
7 hours. And so the 4 topics, was the time equally spent, or was it like, oh no, we really spent most of the time on feedback? Or
yeah, and across 2 days for the virtual experience, 2 back-to-back days.
2 back-to-back on virtual.
Yep.
Okay.
3.5 hours each, which is a long time to spend virtually. We removing barriers, we had that as a red thread throughout.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and we focused on prioritization, feedback, and goal setting. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the time was spent roughly divided, in a kind of an equivalent way across those 3.
Obviously the micro learning catches my attention, right? Again, we're all about that follow through stuff here at LeadX. And I want to give context. Those numbers are actually strong. We see them ourselves. So if you just throw a content library over the fence at your people, you might get 5 to 10% in a given month that will dip their toe in it. Not many. 90% will never touch it in a given month. So you getting even 50% utilization of any amount of micro learning is pretty incredible. When you talked about you guys got better as you tweaked it over time, was it better content, better timing? Was there any other learnings about making the micro learning more effective?
Yeah, one of the things was making it a little bit more micro. It was a little word. No, and so just being very succinct and very pointed and at the heart of exactly what they needed to do, provided a little bit less in terms of reminders of things that we've
Mhm.
already talked about, and
Yeah.
just dove straight in to what is the heart of the matter, what are the things we need to go and do immediately, and then we ask folks to be able to respond with their answers, but we were asking open response, and we just found that folks, we were doing a lot of customer empathy, and folks were like, I don't have time. I don't have time for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And so we actually shifted that more to very, very thoughtfully crafted multiple choice of like, these are the different scenarios. Where are you in this scenario? And then if you selected A, then the guidance we provided you of like, oh, wow, that's really hard. Have you considered doing this or this? You know, and so we tried to make it dynamic in that way so that it was really actionable, but also didn't require very much of the learner, you know, which is disappointing, but just in the real world, you know.
Yeah, I hear that. Lori, go ahead and take yourself off mute and hit us with a question.
Yeah, hi Barrett. Love the simplicity of the 4 goals that you have for managers. Just wondering, how did you do assessments on the managers, whether they were, I see that you got like that was the goal, that the managers were helping with goal setting and removing barriers, but what was the assessment process of not just going to the workshop with the micro learning, but yeah, where was that in the process?
The assessment process for those 4 foundational
For the
capabilities.
managers. Yeah, particularly for the managers.
No, nothing, no rocket science there. Just we have 4 items in the pulse survey, you know, and they specifically address those behaviors, and then we, you know, are able to get feedback for our managers and provide them with that feedback as well. And so
Okay, so that was a broad pulse survey to all the employees.
that's right.
Was it anonymous and then aggregated for you to be able to give the manager that information?
That's correct. Yeah, and the difficulty with that is, you know, 55% of our managers actually get that direct information. Everyone gets an indirect manager score, but 45% have fewer than 5 people who complete the survey. We're actually looking at some spans and layers right now to
Okay.
be able to increase that percentage and just have less folks managing 1 or 2 people.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And the last thing that I'll mention is we actually were able to see an increase in quality of goals in some early kind of goal setting activities that we've just been testing. And the quality, increased quality and feedback was we used AI to be able to assess against that. And I know Evan was mentioning, if I could mention really briefly how we did that. Basically, we didn't use Gemini or ChatGPT because that creates an interface with an LLM. We had to go and actually call the particular LLM we chose directly with that data. And then basically we build we build a tool based on, you know, a lot of contributions from folks, really, really careful understanding of what exactly we mean by actionable, really clear, actionable feedback, along with our SBIC, situation, behavior, impact, change, or continue model. And the same thing with goals. What do we mean by specific and what do we mean by measurable goals? And so we built 2 models directly interacting with an LLM, not through one of those interface like Gemini or ChatGPT. And then you actually have to feed the feedback and the goals in one at a time into the system. So we literally have to automate the process of like Kevin's goals, then Dwayne's goals, then Lori's goals, then Rennie's goals. And they go through one at a time. And basically we have a group of SMEs on both for goals and for feedback that assess the quality of those goals for a portion of the goals against the model. We tweaked the model, assessed it again, and tweaked the model, assessed it again, tweaked the model, and then we got to the point where the human evaluation and the tool evaluation were about 90%, and then we just fed all those feedback pieces through everyone's mid-year feedback, and that's how we were able to assess that we were able to see a significant increase in the quality of the feedback, and that we're testing now for the quality of goals.
Love it. Barrett, in just a minute, Evan is going to send people into a very quick breakout, just so people can meet 2 or 3 other individuals. But let me ask, Rennie typed in the chat. So you talked about there is a sheep dip component to this, right? Let's take 1,000 people and push them through this. So how are you going to have the new joiners catch up? You're going to get probably 100, 200 people a year, right, that joining into the company. How do you put them through this
600
program?
new managers each year, 500 to 600 new managers each year, and It's all embedded now into manager onboarding. So the manager
Okay.
onboarding experience is 70% kind of manager foundations 1.0 with like 10 to 15% manager foundations 2.0 plus kind of all the regular onboarding activities that folks need to go through.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, hey, great to meet you all. Great to reconnect. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn if you would like. I'd love to continue learning, and I'll see y'all next quarter.
All right. People are coming back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hardcore learners sticking around for the final few plays of the month. Yeah, there we go. How's your session, Dwayne?
It was good. I've decided to steal some stuff from Johnny. We're gonna connect, and I'm gonna be a thief. I love stealing good stuff.
Nice.
So she says that she has some good stuff to share with me. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. I always find that's such a sign of success when there's like stealable ideas. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love
Yeah,
that
yeah.
a lot. I love that a lot. One of the things that jumped out at me, to me, one of the takeaways from the Intuit case was once again this idea where, like they're boiling things down to like 4 really important things. That's how they're doing
Yeah.
their manager pulse surveys and everything else. I'd love to see even more than a day spent on it, of course. But it reminds me that music producer Rick Rubin says, "I'm not a producer, I'm a reducer." This whole idea about minimalism, right? So it's like you want someone to actually do something to focus on it. Don't give them 12 competencies and 15 behaviors and 82 models. We just bury people with this stuff. But anyway, hey, with only a couple.
He also did a good job carrying it through by doing a lot of the lifting for the learners. Even when it's like, okay, if you don't want to do the open box, we're going to drill it down and make it so easy for you that you just have to actually answer the questions. And sometimes that's the way to do it to get the engagement. So kudos for him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Dwayne, let me do you just really quick. I just like to tease these so people can go online and learn about them themselves. The things that caught my eye in the last month, things I've been thinking about. In the coming years with this AI revolution, you're going to hear the term peak horse. If you want to impress people in your parties, if you want to impress people in the boardroom, you're going to start dropping this term peak horse. And peak horse, it refers to when were there the most horses in America? And it was like, right around here, 1915, there was about 30 million horses in America. They, were for transportation and like workhorses. And then as cars came onto the scene and tractors and things like that, we don't need as many horses. So, by 1960, we were down to 3 million horses. And so peak horse was 1910, and it took, 50 years to lose 90% of the horses. Now, this is relevant because, of course, you can look at how technology disrupts any job class. So the decline in human workers per car. So sticking with cars, back in 1920, it took about 160 to 200 humans would touch a car to assemble a Model T, on that Ford assembly line. We're down to around 20 to 30 humans that touch a car on an automobile assembly line. There's still humans assembling cars, but only about 10% of those that we had during peak horse time, in 1920. If you look at, there used to be like printing press people, people who would typeset your business cards, your letterhead and all that. And then what happened? Macintosh came on, right? And all of a sudden people had PageMaker, and we were peak horse until Macintosh arrived. And now in like 10 years, 90% of those jobs went away. So in the world of AI, everyone's going to be wondering, when are we at peak horse for which jobs, and how many years before we lose 90%? Just a term to think about. Along this line, Microsoft, even though they're having record sales and profits, they announced 3% cut just because they don't need those people. And now 30% of their code is written by AI. And AI is only going to get better. This article, Harvard Business Review. So I love this. This was based on a massive study of successful CEOs. What makes successful CEOs stand apart? They boiled it down, and here's 4 big buckets. They're decisive. They'd rather make a wrong decision quickly than no decision at all. They engage for impact. And if you read the article, there's a lot of EQ stuff in there. How do you engage people effectively? How do you adapt? More EQ, of course, resilience, and then they deliver results. It is all about achieving those goals and results. Great article. The article spun out into a book. You can, we'll send you the notes and we'll send you these slides, but that's very cool. And then the fourth thing is just a reminder, go play with Higgsfield AI. Go do a friend dirty the way I did Dwayne Best and animate them in some hilarious way so that you can talk about creating videos with text only. That's really the idea. Text command, creating videos. I want to thank everyone for joining us. You've got options. Time is valuable. Dwayne, send us out for the weekend until we get together again a month from now.
Yeah, I was writing down some notes, but I would say first and foremost, happy Father's Day to all the
Oh,
fathers
yes.
on the call and those fathers who are in your life. Let's make Father's Day cool again. Let's give it a little more gusto like we do Mother's Day, just saying. And for the last 2 weeks, I have a challenge for you all. I would say we'll start with the oldie but goodie quote, and that is, if you think you can, and if you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can, if you think you can't, you're right. So my challenge for you is this. Let's find one meeting each week to either use your pregnant pause to allow that revelation to occur, or use one meeting a week to, what did she say? To be radically present, I think she said, right? So can we be radically present in one meeting a week as a micro behavior, or can we leverage the pregnant pause? So that's the challenge. So I hope everyone have a wonderful rest of June.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dwayne, for all that you do. Thanks, everyone, for sharing and playing along. Have a great weekend. See you soon.